We're back. Fenway Rundown on Wednesday, September 3rd. And it, just like it has been all season, Sean, has been a very busy day. Very busy week, I should say. Not a day yet, but we might be heading in that direction for the Red Sox. Since we last recorded, a lot has happened. I've been on vacation. I went to the beach. I did not go to a football game. There's a rumor I went to a football game. Please don't say I went to a football game. There was no game involved. Um, but the Red Sox have been busy, and there's been kind of breaking news most of the last few days, as there has been all year. We're going to work backwards because there's a lot to get to since we last recorded in the middle of last week. Um, First, and I think foremost, and on the mind of every Red Sox fan right now, as we sit here, we don't know much at noon on Wednesday. Roman Anthony might be hurt, and
That might be. He is hurt. It's a
he
matter
is
of
hurt.
how seriously he's hurt.
And you and I both weren't there last night. Chris Smith held down the fort, but reading the quotes and seeing kind of the tenor from everybody there, it didn't seem like everybody was super enthusiastic that this would be, a tiny little thing. They're going to probably play it safe. If it's on the margins, it'll probably be an IL stint. But, what do we know and what do we think?
Well, it's concerning, obviously, because of how important Anthony is to this team as a guy who has assumed the leadoff position and sort of become a tone setter just a few months into his big league career. He's been among the most consistent performers. The multi-hit games seem to pile up. He's on base two or three times a night, it seems, and playing a solid outfield, everything you could have hoped he would be in his rookie season. And yet, as you suggest, Chris, these can be uh, considerable injuries in terms of lost time. And the danger, as always, is that you rush to come back, re-aggravate it, and then get a much longer layoff stint because of the aggravation of the injury. Those soft tissue issues, whether they be hamstrings or calf pulls, or in this case, an oblique strain, have to be managed very carefully. And this could not have come at a worse time for the Red Sox because they are already without one of their other starting outfielders in Wilyer Abreu. When that injury took place, they were optimistic. They were saying, like, oh, he'll definitely be ready to go as soon as that IL stint is over. He's
Right.
not even close, hasn't even started running. So he's probably going to miss the majority, if not all, of the upcoming road trip. The hope would be that maybe he's ready to go for the homestand when the Yankees come in a week from Friday. But you're now missing two significant bats and two very good everyday outfielders. And that's not a good thing for the Red Sox at this time of year, where they're still have their eyes on the division title and certainly the wild card race.
Yeah, I mean, I think Roman Anthony to me has been the MVP of this team since he was called up. You could talk about Bregman, you could talk about Story. Things changed when he was called up. People point to the Devers trade. We talked about this last time. Any length of time that he's missing is a huge loss. Remember, for weeks and months we talked about having too many outfielders. If you're down Abreu and Anthony, obviously that's a lot of Rafaela in center where he is best. Um, Duran in the mix, and then maybe the password comes back up, and maybe you see a little more Ref Snyder, or Yoshida plays left, which is not a perfect scenario for anybody. And then second base, you take Rafaela out of the mix, and it's Romy and Hamilton. I know Hamilton's been better than he was early in the year. There's a lot of moving parts there, a lot of ways they could go, but it's a huge day in terms of getting those results back. And it'll be interesting to see how they manage it. Do they look at it and see? I didn't look at Fangraphs this morning, but I think their chance of making the playoffs is 95, 96%. With that in mind, do they make sure Anthony's okay and maybe, bring him back for some tune-ups before October? Do they, try to get him back to push for the division? I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge few hours here as they get those results back and, the fallout of that too.
Yeah, I can't think of a guy that means more. Maybe you could make the case that Bregman and Story, because
Yeah.
of their experience, because of their postseason experience, because of their sort of steady presence and the positions they play, right? I mean, you could, if you lost Story, move Rafaela there. You could move some people around in the infield. You could find somebody to play third, but um, in terms of what they mean to tone setting, energy, day-to-day production, it's hard to think of anybody being a tougher loss to that roster right now than Roman Anthony.
Yep, and we'll see if he is as the day goes on. Abreu, like you said, not progressing at this point. When you have that chance, when you have that 96% chance, health is the most important thing. And then I think also making sure your rotation is set up. We talked about it a week ago or 8 days ago when we recorded. What do you do down the stretch? Do you set up for home field advantage, or do you set up for getting your big three in a rotation? Things have changed significantly. So on Friday, um, the Red Sox made a drastic, dramatic, aggressive change with their rotation times two. It feels like forever ago now because a lot has happened in the last 5 days. But Payton Tolle is up, which we had kind of thought was going to happen last time we talked on here. And Walker Buehler was released. We'll get to this in a few different ways. I have Buehler thoughts for sure. You covered Tolle versus Skeens. You described to me Payton Tolle's post game interview as I think unbelievable or incredible, and obviously he's a guy that you know I was super impressed with doing that story on his late mother last year and getting to know him through that process, remotely. We met in spring training this year. At that point, I didn't think he'd be up in the big leagues by this year, but um, two things really to cover on him. Number one, what was Friday night like for those, including me, who were not there? And number two, what does his promotion and the release of Bueller say about the aggressiveness all-in approach of Craig Breslow right now?
Yeah. Well, first, it was a lot of fun at the ballpark because not only did you have a highly anticipated major league debut on the part of Payton Tolle, and that's a name that Red Sox fans have gotten to know in the last month or two. I'd say that the attention has picked up and people kind of looking ahead. Okay, Myers here, though injured. Anthony's here. Campbell was up, now back. We've seen the password. We've seen all these position players come up. But what about the pitching? And Payton Tolle was clearly the top pitching prospect, homegrown, a guy that
Very quickly
has.
homegrown.
What's that?
Very quickly homegrown.
Yes, yeah, I was going to say has made a meteoric climb up the ladder. To think that, in April and May he was pitching in Greenville, and now he's pitching not only in the major leagues but doing so for a team with designs and a very, very good chance of making it to the postseason. This is not, the Washington Nationals playing out the string and let's get a head start on next year and get Tolle's feet wet with 5 starts in September. No, this is, hey, we need to win every game, and we think he's giving us a chance to do that. And certainly he did on Friday, though he ended up having no decision. He was effective and impressive. 5 1/3 innings, 8 strikeouts, a couple of runs allowed. One of those was inherited that Greg Weissert couldn't shut down. But Tolle was electric, and it was fun to watch because he was clearly into it. A lot of body language on the mound, jumping up and down, enthusiastic, all the things we had kind of heard about. And then to see him and his personality come out in that postseason, in the postgame press conference, and throw in the fact that he's opposed by Paul Skeens in this. Like, oh, P.S. The other guy might be
Literally,
the pitcher
P.S.
in the game. So, that was a lot of fun. And, it was one of those debuts that you remember. Sometimes guys come up and go 1 for 4 as a position player or, give you kind of a decent outing as a pitcher. But that's one, given all the circumstances, the opponent, the opposing pitcher, the significance of the game, people are going to remember that Payton Tolle major league debut for a while. And I suspect, we're going to see more of him and his contributions down the stretch.
The best loss of the season, I think, for the Red Sox. I mean, it was a bad loss, but no one's going to really remember that. Also, Anthony homering off Skeens and kind of
Right.
kind of reminds you of in a younger version of, Judge against Crochet, best on best type stuff. I think, definitely one of the more memorable nights of the year at Fenway. To me, like, two ways you could go with this. Number one, they're so short on rotation options. They just had to say, screw it. he definitely deserved to be called up. But this is not, the Boston Red Sox player development track that we've gotten to know over the last few years. Guys have been slow played, and you've seen, even Anthony, right, or some of these guys, Campbell coming up for opening day, and totally like they're at the point where if you can contribute, they're going to say, develop up here. And we've seen some of these guys come up a little quicker than anticipated. No case quite like this. The flip side, of course, of that, Walker Buehler, given his outright release only about 6 days after they announced that he was going to the bullpen, one outing, the Richard Fitz injury, changed things where I think they were going to slot Fitz into the fifth spot, have Bueller be the long man, and then maybe Tolley and Harrison as backup plans. With Criswell hurt, Kyle Harrison, who we'll get to again in a second, dealing with a minor injury, Tolley became the guy. And, throughout the day Friday, just trying to we were kind of getting some texts like, what's the obvious move here? Like you can't, if you wanted to do something, send down Bernardino. Like at this point, he's one of the best arms you have. He's had a good year. One bad month, right? But he's been good. I know you have a lot of lefties, whatever. They're not going to do that. Are they going to send down Weissert? Probably not, even though I don't think either of us trust him in big spots. But it was like, all right, well, does Walker Buehler have an injury? Probably not. So what are they going to do? And for them to, pull the plug on that 5 months into a $21 million deal, we've talked a lot about Bueller. We've talked and reported about how they've been considering pulling the plug on him for a while. It wasn't that one bullpen outing was so horrible that he was released. I mean, it wasn't great. He gave up a homer. Yankee Stadium is what it is. To me, it's almost as aggressive as the Tolley promotion, maybe even more aggressive to just say, look, you've been bypassed. Good luck. A playoff team picked him up in 36 hours, right? Like that's, I mean, Alex Cora still thinks the stuff is there. This is a guy who literally got the last out of the World Series a year ago, but they just said, you know what? Just you're not as high on our list as some other guys, and good luck and farewell. And I think that is,
I like the urgency that it showed.
yeah, right,
I don't mean to be cold toward Bueller,
right,
but they just took a look around and said, how much is this guy going to help in the bullpen?
yeah.
And what other move can we make to create a spot on the roster for a guy we think can be pretty dynamic here in the final 4 or 5 weeks? And whatever Tolley showed them, it sort of backed up that faith that they have in him. 5 1/3, 8 strikeouts, didn't look out of place at all. And now the problem going forward is that they have been smartly managing his workload for most of the year, and he has not pitched on regular rest anywhere, whether it be Greenville, Portland, Worcester, and now here. And to further protect him, they're going to continue to do that, which is why he's not pitching tonight
Mm-hmm.
when he otherwise might be on his fifth day. They want to continue to give him extra rest. He's not used to having this kind of demands on his body and just the significance of these games he's pitching in. Again, this is not go out for the Washington Nationals 25 games out of first place and show what you can do for next year. This is, we need to win this game so that we don't fall further behind the Yankees and keep the Blue Jays within sight. And the way to do that is to give him an extra day, every turn. Sometimes that's going to be easier depending on how the week falls with an off day a week, basically for the rest of the year. But there are other times where they're going to have to move people around and go with a bullpen game to accommodate him. And look, there's two things going on with this team right now that should give you concern. When a team gets to the postseason, you want two things. You want them to be healthy, and you want the pitching to be in good shape. And right now, the Red Sox are 0 for 2 in those categories. Now, the pitching in good shape is a sort of movable target because they do have three very good front guys in Crochet, Bayo, and Giolito. But there's a drop off after that, even allowing for how impressive Tolley was, because they're going to have to mix things up and move things around to accommodate him. And they got to figure out what's going on with Dustin May and get more from him. And we already talked about the injuries to Abreu and Anthony that are going to compromise them at least for a week or so. So um, they do have 3.5 weeks to get ready for the playoffs. It's not tomorrow, it's not next week, but the deeper you get into September with these twin issues, not enough starting pitching and injuries affecting your everyday lineup, that those are major concerns right now.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin May, I don't think is the answer. I know he had a couple of good outings, but uh, what they're doing with him now, he can't be thrilled about as he tries to head into free agency here. He will pitch as an opener or he will pitch behind an opener on short rest tonight, most likely for about 40 pitches. That can't be ideal for a guy that's had a ton of injuries in the past. Honestly, it's kind of surprising they're doing it, but it is, I think, out of necessity. I mean, it's the three guys you mentioned. Tolley as the wild card with high upside, but you got to limit him because of what you talked about. And then from there, it is openers are your best option. May
Yeah,
has not proven it. Criswell is still hurt. And then what I do want to get to, I know you're about to make a point, what does Kyle Harrison have to do to get called up? Because clearly, I think there's something going on with the ankle. He
right.
packed his bags to head to Fenway. I think he had an MRI, and they clearly are not doing that today because Bernardino, but he keeps getting scratched and told like this, and there's something going on there where they're not comfortable with him. Clearly, we'll see how that plays out over the next 3 or 4 hours. But he's not a guy that they're like, they picked Tolley over him, right? I mean, that's kind of how that says a lot. They're super thin, and we've talked about why. You have the four guys that are out for the year, and Crawford, who hasn't pitched at all. Hauk, we know that story. Dobbins and Sandoval didn't ever rebounded time. Then on top
And
of
Fitz
that,
is
Fitz,
essentially out for the year too, even if
right.
they haven't said so.
So that's another big line of defense there. I mean, it is really the three guys. Totally is the wild card, and then your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dustin May does not have to be Cy Young caliber for the rest of September. What he's got to do is give them a chance to win his games. That is 5 innings, maybe.
Did he do
Uh,
that against Pittsburgh?
no, he didn't. But I'm saying they're not asking him to come in and throw 5 shutout innings. They're
Mm-hmm.
asking him to keep it manageable, 3 runs in 5 innings. As a veteran guy who's, as far as we know, healthy, you should be able to give him that much. And maybe working out of the bullpen in shorter stints here over the next 10 days as they move this rotation around and try to make everything fit. Maybe that ends up giving him some time to work on some stuff, to try some things out of the bullpen. It really shouldn't, he's your number 5 guy. He doesn't have to be dominant, but he's got to give you a better chance to win than he has.
Yeah, and I think again we talked about this throughout the last couple months. They're like super short right now. Do you have any concerns with Garrett Crochet?
In that this is the second bad one in the last few weeks, it raises your eyebrow a little bit. There's certainly nothing about the stuff to suggest that there's anything really physically wrong with him, but you do wonder for a guy who has never gone above 146 innings until this year. He is now up to what, 187 or something. He's going to finish the year, they hope, over 200 innings. And is this the result of being a little tired now? Is he a guy that you have to maybe give an extra day here and there? They did that in Minneapolis at the trade deadline. They essentially skipped him for a start to allow him to rebound a little bit more. Does he need one more of those? If he does, you got to pick your spots against certain opponents. You do have 2 series with the Athletics who are not very good. Maybe you could put together a bullpen game there. Maybe you plug in Harrison for 4 or 5 innings at some point. But you do wonder if this is not some fatigue showing up on Garrett Crochet. The fact that he was so good for 4 or 5 innings last night and then gets hit for 3 home runs in the same inning, that to me says he ran out of gas.
Yeah.
That he wasn't finishing, that he was leaving pitches up in the zone. Not the end of the world. And we saw that how dominant he could be through those first 5 innings. The one home run from Noel was kind of off the end of the bat, the other way, just past the pesky pole. No big deal, but they were connecting against him in that three homer inning, and it does make you wonder whether that last night in the middle of the game and in general he's hit something of a wall here with his workload.
Yeah, and you got to think in kind of not just his terms, but Giolito. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the big option at 140 innings. He's going to be a guy who's going to go from zero last year to 140, 150. That's a big jump. I know he's a guy who was always an innings eater in his career. The seasons before 173, 176, 178, 161, 184, but still coming off an arm injury, they probably wanted to slow play him a little bit more for contractual reasons or otherwise. Bayo had a year last year where he tallied up some innings, but he stayed healthy. It's going to be interesting to see how they do this down the stretch, and it is that question: do you push for the division, or do you try to get in and figure it out with everybody healthy? I think you have to do the latter, but we'll see how it goes. We are 25 minutes into this podcast. And there's been so much going on that now we're going to get to the fact that they signed one of their all-star players to an extension over the weekend. Um, I would say this came out of nowhere, but the intrepid Sean McAdam wrote about it 24 hours before as how good Aroldis Chapman had been. I think, when this happened Saturday night, neither of us expected it. But Aroldis Chapman is locked in for next season. He's getting a nominal raise. This to me uh, was kind of a stunner. Not the biggest news of the year because there's been a lot, but pretty big that, he got 13.3 guaranteed. There's a vesting option that's very attainable, 40 innings next year. He gets 13 million in 2027. I think if you had asked me a week ago, would you do 2 for 26 for Chapman on the open market? Absolutely. Where do I sign? If you had said, would you do 2 for 30? I would have said yes. If you had said, would you do 2 for 32? I would have said yes. 2 for 30. I mean,
We get it.
it's a bargain, right? Like, I mean, there's no other way to look at
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, this is a steal for the Red Sox. This
Yeah.
is below market value for a guy who I don't think there's much argument here. He's been the best closer in the game,
Yep.
certainly in the American League. I'd have to look a little closer in the National League, but I mean, what's not to like? 28 out of 30. A historically for him low walk rate, a whip of 0.6 something, and an ERA. We're now into September. His ERA is 1.100. This is
Right.
not a guy who pitched 3 innings and gave up nothing or gave up a run. And the math is funny. He has pitched in what, close to 60 games at this point, or 50 something games, and he has an ERA of 1. The strikeout rate is huge. He doesn't give up hits, and he has fixed the one issue that you would otherwise worry about, the walks. And I've said this a million times, but it remains true. He deserves a ton of credit for, at 37, making the adjustments to improve this hole in his game
Mm-hmm.
and make him the best closer in baseball at 37. And if you were going to bet on a guy for another year and maybe two to hold up at ages 38, 39, my money's on the guy who looks like he could compete in the Mr. America contest while throwing 100 at age 37.
Yep.
He does not have a history of arm trouble at all in his career. He's a beast when it comes to working out and keeping himself in great condition. You can see that just looking at him. uh, you know, no notes here in terms of the Red Sox. They got themselves a steal, and as I wrote the other day, it's kind of it says something about where they've come as an organization that this guy could have gone out on the market, maybe gotten 3 years, maybe gotten 45 million, kind of gotten the kind of
Okay.
deals that
I
Diaz
mean,
and
I
Hader.
think that's low, but go ahead.
Okay, but
Yeah.
right, he could have got 3 for 45.
Mm-hmm. Or more.
Or certainly, 2 for 15 plus, and then a vesting option or an option. And the fact that he said, I like it here. I like my teammates. I like the environment. And presumably this is part of his thinking, although he's won two World Series. He's going, yeah, I can win here. We're going to compete in the next few years. All of those things are a good referendum on where the Red Sox stand as a franchise.
Yeah, I just looked it up. A guy we talked about a billion times last winter, Tanner Scott, 4 for 72. Obviously, he's 30, not 38. But when you're talking AAV, 13 versus 18 is a huge difference. This is a guy in Aroldis Chapman. We would have had a conversation. Would you give him the qualifying offer in a month and a half? I mean,
Right?
really?
For $8 million
Yep, more.
more than they're going to pay him.
Yep. And so, and to me, like it was Saturday night, Labor Day weekend. Probably, didn't get the attention that you would guess it would. And again, a busy weekend, a lot going on, Tolle, Buehler, everything. But this is a big piece of offseason business for the Red Sox done because when you look at it, everybody talks about the young core, and you expect, from this point on, of course, Anthony, Meyer and Campbell, a little bit more wild card because of all that stuff. But then Tolle and some of these guys you have, locked in around the diamond to be part of your core, and Narvaez is a rookie, and Rafael is under control, and Bayo, and all that stuff. What people haven't talked about enough, I think, is you have the potential for 4 or 5 of your very best players this year to be free agents after the season, and we'll get to these topics in November for sure. Bregman can opt out, and he will. Story can opt out. Giolito is probably going to be a free agent, and Chapman was going to be a free agent, and Justin Wilson, and Ref Snyder. They have a lot of their older guys who are
Yep.
free agents, and that's for a contending team. You want to plug these, closer would have been a need. Now it's not. It's a huge piece of business they got done, at a time where you don't usually see those types of extensions getting done.
Well, look, long way to go. Still 3.5 weeks left in this season, and whatever October is going to bring, and then the off season. But as we sit here on September 3rd, they have three starters locked in that they'd be very happy with in Crochet, Bayo, and Tolley, with what we expect will be an effort and probably a mutual effort to work something out with Giolito coming back. You've got your entire outfield set, so much so that you could trade one of those guys
Mm-hmm.
to fill another spot. You've got your two back end guys in your bullpen. You're in pretty good shape catching wise. Maybe
Well,
they can
three if you,
upgrade on the number
Slayton,
two.
Whitlock, and Chapman.
Yeah, yeah, right. Slayton, I should add, but yeah, so three high leverage guys at the back end. The the big check marks are corner infield. Is Casas healthy? Can he be counted on? Did they do something else? Do they bring Bregman back? If not, can Meyer be counted on to play third base? And another starter. Now, obviously, they're going to need more than four, but from among Criswell and Fitz and all the others, Sandoval and all the others, they have plenty of number
Well, I
five.
mean, how Crawford, Dobbins, Sandoval, all coming back.
Yeah, I mean, how we're
Hout's
not going
not,
to
but
see until September.
Crawford and Sandoval and Dobbins should
Right.
be
They need
in the
one
next.
more mid-rotation starter, and they have to address the corner infield spots. And other than that, they're kind of done. They're
Hmm.
in very good shape going into next year. Now, if they were to lose Bregman, that would be a significant blow. A right-handed bat, the leadership, the defense, all that he's brought. But, by every indication, he wants to stay here. They want him to stay here. It wouldn't surprise me to see something get worked out to bring him back. And then you're looking at what do you do at first and who's your number three starter.
Yep, and we will
That's
get.
that's a pretty small shopping list on September 3rd.
Yeah, you shook your head about Story opting out. I think that there's a tiny chance, but the Red Sox can bring him back if
Yeah,
they
I
want with
mean, look,
that.
I
So
can't say it's a guarantee that he won't, but if you're asking me, is he going to? My thought is no. That,
yeah,
that he's unlikely to get more than 50 million over the next 2 years, and adding on to that, given his age and his recent, though he's been very, very durable this year, his recent health injury and record, that might, even with the year he's had, that might scare off some teams to make that commitment. He too obviously likes it here. I'll put it at about 90% that he does not opt out.
yeah. This is one more thing I want to get to before we kind of close with some overall stuff. The Red Sox promoted 2 players when rosters expanded on Monday. One was not in the organization, so that was a surprise. Zach Kelly's back
Well,
up.
he was by the time they promoted him.
Right. Zach Kelly's back up, and Ollie Sanchez is back in a minor trade with the Mets. He gets promoted. This is a huge, huge under the radar thing to me. They went out and made a trade for Ollie Sanchez as their extra player for right now, not all of September, instead of promoting Christian Campbell. I mean, that to me is says a lot about how they want the development to continue. They're not comfortable throwing Campbell in at a time when they've been super aggressive. We talked about Tolle, Buehler, all that stuff. Campbell remains in Worcester. Might that not be the case by the end of the day if, Anthony's hurt and they choose Campbell, whatever it might be, Garcia? Point remains. That is, to me, compared to where we were in April, a little bit stunning.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you and I kind of joked about the Twitter reaction to Sanchez and Kelly. Evidently, people thought they were hiding a Triple Crown winner and a Cy Young Award contender in Worcester and passed them over. I mean, what did people expect for players 27 and 28 on the active roster? You've already kind of
Called everybody
cleaned
up.
up your prospect inventory from Worcester with Meyer, with Anthony, with Tolley. There's only so many blue chippers you're going to have at AAA that you're going to get a head start on in September, and they don't need somebody to come up and like, okay, get us to the postseason.
Right.
This is about depth, having one more arm in the bullpen and giving them the freedom to do some things with the third catcher. I suspect, as you do, that that's not necessarily, in fact, it's almost a given that before the end of the week, one of those two guys goes back down. And it's quite likely that both of them will before the end of September arrives. But for right now, what they needed additional depth options, and that's who they got.
Right. And that, I think, there's other guys. Garcia, obviously in the mix, there's a few. And, I think to me, there's still moves to be made. Obviously, we're all pretty much revolving around Roman Anthony's injury, which by the time you listen to this, we might have more. At 12:35, we do not. Red Sox finishing up their homestand against the Guardians tonight. It has been an okay homestand. Two losses against the Pirates, followed by three wins now, and they are sitting pretty in terms of the playoff race. Credit I think goes to them for, again, you were there, I was not. Friday and Saturday were ugly, but they didn't let that slide. Linger. The last three games have been pretty good ones. Bayo was not great Monday, right? Crochet was not great last night. They still won both of those games tonight. A bullpen game, if you can sweep the series, great. If not, is what it is. You win the series and then head out west. I will be there, back working for the first time in a week. Arizona for three, Oakland for three, and then they come back for what's going to be a super important series against the Yankees.
Will not be going to Oakland, or if you do, you'll be getting a demerit from your supervisor.
Well, yeah, I had Sacramento. Let me tell you, the hotel situation, not great. We'll be there, though. Have you covered on MassLive in the pod.